Merry meet, Annie here. Welcome back to Tarot Together. And this topic, the last one before I move on to actually looking at the individual cards, is the topic of the dreaded journaling. I actually didn't have this topic on my list of things to do for you, but I had a lot of questions come to me here and through emails regarding the challenge of journaling. What to journal, how to journal. Some of you love to journal. Some of you question journaling because it's one of your least favorite things in the world. So journaling for your experience and evolution and maturing understanding of the tarot. Well, the first thing is, I mentioned in one of the videos on study, it's got to be fun. It's not supposed to be drudgery, something you dread doing. It should be something that you see the reason for it, and whether it's something you have a natural inclination to do or not, to take on with pleasure, enjoying it. Journaling is so important. Studying the tarot and actually studying a lot of different things that we take on that have to do with the development of our personal practice, our spirituality, our understanding of ourselves in relation to understanding of what deity might or might not be for us. One of the reasons why journaling, a form of capturing both facts and considerations, is important in the world of tarot, is we do turn to those who have assembled sophisticated lists of correspondences and meanings for each of the cards. We turn to those who have experience reading the cards for their information, what they've collected. We look to historically what symbols and symbolism is attached to each of the cards. But there are 78 cards. So first, it's overwhelming to think you can remember everything you ever see or hear regarding any one of the cards. But actually the most important part of journaling is we capture facts and figures and feelings and experiences we have along the way as we learn each of the cards. And then we see the pattern within that we recognize, that we come to understand. When you take on the study of the tarot, as I do, very traditionally, going after the traditional symbols and meanings, you can get caught in the web of someone else said. That's not where you want to go. It is where we begin, collecting information, learning from others. But then there is what it becomes for us. As my friend Emily recently said in a video she did on the tarot, journaling is an opportunity not just to collect bits and pieces of information, but to capture your thoughts and your reaction and your journey along the way. The reason we do it is, in a sense, to catalog the information we come across, but it's not to parrot that information and to duplicate the meaning that someone else assigned a card. It's to collect the impressions others have been kind enough to share with us, to collect the historical symbolism for the cards, to give some consideration to that, to see what patterns rise out of that for us. And they'll be like no one else's. No matter how seriously we take the symbols and meanings that are traditional in the cards, in the end, our relationship to them is deeply personal. Our journal provides us the opportunity to place the bits and pieces we find in one place, any one of the cards, and then embracing all that information that we've collected, decide what seems as if it's whispering or yelling at us regarding the cards. What form might our journal take? Certainly, some of us like to do written journals. I don't find that works for me so much, not in this age of being able to use the computer, because I'm always adding things and shifting things and rearranging things and recategorizing things, all part of the fun of making the meaning of each one of the cards my own meaning. If I were writing that out handwritten, oh, I guess if I had it in a ring notebook, I could rearrange pages, but I'm constantly rearranging even the sentences and the paragraphs and the categories within the way I collect it. So let me tell you how I journal. And my hope is that we will have folks watching this video or folks in our Facebook group that journal in a completely different way, that they can add how they do it, so that someone who's wondering how to journal can see some examples of what folks do. I have a process I follow as I'm learning each card. First, I take myself into the journey of what the traditional symbolism is for the card, through the references I use both online and books that I have collected. That's where I start my journaling. Literally with an image of the card on my computer, and then a list of all the various symbols, colors, relationships and correspondences that are the sum of the drawing itself. I found for me that was a good place to start in my journaling. So the first document that I have within each of the sub-documents for each of the cards on my computer is symbolism. And then attributes are the next thing that I like to work on. Attributes, keywords, key phrases, all those long lists of words or sentences that you'll find on videos or in books where you hear people speak about in videos. The meanings they have assigned to the cards. How I do that is I literally go through a period of time of just jotting down what I find, and sometimes what I think of in relationship to the things that I find. I might make a note to myself to question something, or that doesn't quite resonate with me, or ooh, I want to learn more about that. But that beginning collection, that beginning journaling for attributes, the meanings of the cards, jottings is what it boils down to. It might be words or impressions. Sometimes it's a phrase. And along the way, I may encounter a paragraph in a book that moves me. I'll make note of that too. The thing is, as I'm beginning to do that, somewhere along the way, I'll start seeing categories, groupings of comments that logically go together. Now here's what I decided when I took on journaling as a way of learning the tarot, relearning the tarot. I don't like other people's categories, whether they are traditional or not. I ignore the listings of categories that people have in their books and on their websites. I like the characteristics and the keywords that people collect. I enjoy seeing which of those I relate to and adding them into my attributes list. But to me, the next step, and it tends to evolve as I go along, is suddenly I'll see that there'll be a group of comments that all have to do with something similar. For instance, for the Fool, a whole group of jottings that I've put in my attributes file for the Fool might have to do with wonder and curiosity. They could have to do with the sense of infinity, evolution, change, fearlessness, inspiration from the divine. They're all categories that worked their way out of the general attributes that I collected and listed. No work in the collecting and listing, just jotting down, in this case typing, in my file. And then certain groupings of them became categories, kind of like a general description of a group of the attributes. So my journaling then becomes a list of categories and all the attributes I would put within each of those categories. And I'm kind enough to myself to keep a general category for bits and pieces of things that I find that don't quite fit in any of the categories. Sometimes it's someone's unique insight or experience with the card that are captured there. I actually find that in the end, everything meaningful about a card to me falls into 5 or 6 categories. And not at the beginning, and not the categories that someone else has used. Although sometimes they will resonate so strongly with me that another category used by another person will show up in mine. So first it's a symbolism for me, and then it's just gleefully collecting bits and pieces and facts and information shared by my resources regarding the temperament and the meaning of a card, and then I categorize that jumbled list into categories, logically putting groups of those attributes together. Now comes consideration of reversals. Reversals to me are not the opposite of or the negative version of those positive things that are listed in my categories and attributes that I did when I collected that information. To me, reversals, I do use reversals when I do my spreads or my daily card draw. To me, reversals have to do with maybe having not enough of the aspect of a card, maybe having too much of the aspect of the card, and probably the most important thing, the meaning of the card. It's not time appropriate. There's something going on that influences it. A card around it, if I'm doing a multiple card draw or spread, also it gives me a chance. For instance, if there's an aspect of fearlessness that comes up in a single card draw for me, as the Fool that comes up, with fearlessness and it's reversed, it won't be for me fear, the opposite of fearlessness. A lot of people do reversals, meaning the actual opposite meaning of whatever the attribute was. I don't do that. It means there may be not enough fear. It might be that there is too much fear. It also might mean if I'm experiencing fear in the moment, it's really inappropriate to the situation. Time plays into my interpretation of reversals. I don't use anyone else's interpretation of reversals. So I start off my journaling with symbols and then attributes, which I categorize as I go along. And then I do a list of reversals. The list of reversals I do works from my attributes. I don't collect those from others because the attributes I end up categorizing are the ones that mean the most to me. Therefore, they're reversals. How I interpret the reversals, to me, is a very personal thing. No one else can tell me what it is. That doesn't mean I don't look at reversals that I see on websites or in books. Sometimes when I look at an author's listing of reversals, when I think of the powerful attribute of that particular reversal, I come up with a new way of looking at the positive attributes of a card. So for me, it's studying the symbols first, collecting the attributes, the meanings of the cards, and then categorizing them into categories. And then it's creating my own reversals out of that. I think of my reversals more as the card out of time. That's not where I stop, though. I like to journal, and journaling has always provided me with the opportunity to personalize and make the journey about my relationship to the cards, making it an intimate one, one that takes me not only deeper within, but also connects me in a more powerful sense externally. So journaling is a very important part of the process for me. So I have symbols and attributes which I've categorized, and I have the card out of time, known by some as reversals. I like to collect mantras and affirmations for the cards, quotations and poems that relate to the card. Those things are easy to find nowadays. You can get wonderfully lost in the internet If you are, for instance, let's stick with the Fool as our example. If you are wanting to explore further the concepts of wonder and curiosity, Google quotations about it. Google poetry about it. Sometimes it leads you to new insights to add to the attributes that you have collected. Songs are part of what I like to collect for each of the cards. Things like songs and art that further expresses the meaning of the card, they have to come when you have gone through the process of knowing the symbols and collecting attributes, getting to a point where you have a bit of a personal relationship to the card. Then things like music and lyrics and poetry, movies, books and stories can start to be part of the correspondences you add to your journal. See why the journal to me is something you need to be able to add and expand? Why writing it by hand? I wrote my first tarot journal by hand, but not in a journal that was fixed. It was on cardstock, which I kept in a file box, and I could just add things before and after any of the cards that I wanted to. So once you've done the kind of official collection of symbols and attributes, and you maybe investigate things like mantras and affirmations, explore things like what song would feel like the character of a card for you, what artwork, what images, quotes, and poems. This is the kind of thing that never has to stop. You don't do it until you think you're done and then move on to the other card in the list, the next one. You do it until at that moment you're ready to move on to the next card. You're always going to discover something new to add back in. Personal artwork, if you are an artistic person, sometimes it's a good journal, when you get to the point that you've come to an understanding of a card, to draw it for yourself. Either trying to mimic it, for instance, if I were trying to mimic the Fool in the Rider-Waite deck, or designing something. Now, I'm not particularly handy at drawing myself. I probably wouldn't recognize my Fool if I tried to draw it and imitate the Rider-Waite deck. But I did find that with the world of the internet and all the graphics and images that are available out there, I actually designed my own card at the end of my study of each of the cards. A wonderful thing to collect in your journal is understanding the journey of the Fool through each of the cards. Have a section where the Fool has a conversation with each of the cards that it encounters along the way. What kind of questions would the Fool ask? What kind of questions would be asked of the Fool? We are the Fool. Remember? We put ourselves into the story. Which brings me to a suggestion I saw on a blog about the tarot. Oh, I'm so sorry, I don't remember what blog. Not one I think I ever went back to. Just this one thing leapt off the page. The author of that blog tickled my imagination. By writing that, part of your journaling can be your capturing of your Fool's journey. All the times, for instance, you felt like the Fool or the Hierophant or any of the cards that you're currently studying, that you're currently journaling about. When were you that character? And what life experiences taught you more about that character? Do you see the character in others? It's like using your own timeline, your biographical timeline, your spiritual timeline, your energetic timeline, as the timeline of the Fool. Putting yourself in that place and journaling very personally about when you were that card. Oh, when life taught you aspects of that card, when you saw aspect of that card in others around you. So, we have fun with it. We do it in bits and pieces. I advise doing one card until you feel like you've got a good feel for it. Then move on to the next card. I can't sit down with a tarot book and read it from beginning to end and make notes on all 78 of the cards. I don't find in that process I build my relationship with it. What I find I end up doing is just collecting a bunch of things other people said. But by focusing solely on one card before moving to the next, I find that a certain understanding of the card starts to fall in place. It's because it's an understanding of life that falls in place. We come in contact with our own personal deep knowing and wisdom. Sometimes things we do know and appreciate about what we've experienced in life. Some things we haven't given ourselves credit for, or some things we forgot we knew. Your journaling means that you can always go back and look at and experience again parts of your journey. Sometimes if we drift and lose touch with that journey, seeing our own words, not someone else's, re-inspires us powerfully. The thing is, though, you get to a point with all those words that you've collected, no matter the style you've chosen to journal in, you won't be referring to it as often anymore. But then again, why not? Every now and then, sit down with the words you have written, in a way teaching yourself what you came to understand. When we are new at tarot, we should never hesitate to pick up our journal when we're working with the cards. We're having a conversation with our most wise self. The insight that we captured, that we shared with ourselves. We should always feel free to turn to that. But you'll find, as you work more and more with your cards, the card triggers your memory of the things that you have journaled. You'll be returning to your journal less and less often. But even then, the power of the continuing journaling is to capture your experiences of different card draws and spreads that you do as you begin to do them. You start to recognize repeating patterns and circles in the cards and in your life. You come back in contact by continuing to make notes with what you knew, what you forgot you knew, and you learn something new from yourself, too. What kind of journaling do you do? Are you a jotter of words? Are you a writer of lengthy sentences? Do you categorize and collect? Are your notes scattered? When do you return to them? What use do you make of them? Overlaid over all of the experience of journaling, to me, my question is to you. When it comes to learning something as broad, so expansive as 78 cards, how do you make use of what you capture, what you jot down in however form you do it, to then turn a dry study and collecting of information into a personal epiphany, a personal understanding of the card that has to do only with you and your card, connected to, but so much more than all that information you dutifully collected and journaled. If you could share below and on the Facebook group how you journal and how you make use of your journal, it will be so helpful for others. I know I will find suggestions from you that will increase the quality of my own journaling. But a lot of us watching this series are beginning. Journaling is one of the things, the dreaded journaling, that makes newcomers to the study of the tarot feel overwhelmed. You can't do it wrong. unless you don't do enough of it. As always, comments are welcome below, and there is a link at the end of the video and below to the Facebook group where we've been having some wonderful discussions. Mary Part.